Welcome to the Determined People podcast. We are committed to spreading encouragement, strength, and hope to a world in desperate need of it. Everywhere you look in today's culture, you see stories of remarkable people experiencing remarkable success. Our show focuses on the backstories of everyday, relatable people who have achieved greatness in their lives. We focus on the story behind what we see in the world. Our hope is that you find yourself in these stories, that you say, if that person made it, so can I. And now, our host, John Harrell.
Hello, welcome back. We're glad you're here. Do me a favor, please hit that subscribe button. We are spreading encouragement, strength, and hope to a world in desperate need of those things. And I think you'll agree, our world needs those things. We live in a divided world. I try to be a bridge builder or uniter. Even with those I may not agree with, I can always find some commonality in there. And that's what we're trying to spread here. So thank you for being here. You're going to enjoy today's guest. I met Almonte about 10 years ago on the stage at Riverbend Church. Now, neither she nor I were speaking that day, but she was on the stage standing on a tarp that had a full-size canvas on it, on an easel. And she created this beautiful picture or painting while our pastor was talking about how we are God's masterpiece. And it was beautifully done because not only could I listen to his message, I could watch her create this incredible piece. I was so inspired. I walked down, introduced myself, found out where she showed her work in town, and I went and bought that particular piece because art is such a personal thing, but I fell in love with it. But we're going to hear about the life of the artist because there's a 90% failure rate in people being able to actually make a living as an artist. But she's doing it. So let's get started. Ash, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
It is a 90% failure rate, but you've been successful at it for a long, long time. We'll get into that more in a bit. Mm-hmm. Tell us about your early life. You grew up in Abilene, Texas.
Abilene, Texas, actually like 30 miles outside of Abilene in an even smaller town called Hawley, Texas.
Okay.
But it's not really identifiable on a map, or it wasn't back then, so we just go with Abilene. Only child. Graduated from Hawley High School with a graduating class of 30 people.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah. So I knew early, it's really fascinating because I knew early on that I wanted to be an artist, which I tell people it's like a blessing and a curse because for some people, go tell your parents that you want to be an artist and see how that sets, right? But it was a blessing also because a lot of people spend their whole life trying to figure out, I don't even like to use the word who they are or what they are, but who they are. And like, I knew I'm an artist, whatever that looked like I just knew. And
how old were you when you figured that out?
Oh my gosh. My mother still has my first artwork from the 3rd grade. That was an abstract piece of art that was laminated. Mm-hmm. And her and my stepfather said that they knew then that was what I was going to do. But in junior high, I want to say in 6th grade, I began asking the high school art teacher to teach me more art. Like I knew that I had found this craft that I wanted to really hone in on and learn more. And so I would say, especially where I was from, I didn't know any working artists. I'd never been to a museum. I only knew it in books, right? And so whenever classmates would stand up and say, oh, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a mailman, those were all real jobs that we were exposed to. It was like, I want to be an artist. And it was like this like far out there, non-realistic person that wore a beret and this, Willy Wonka-ish thing. But I knew that's what I wanted to be, even though I didn't know what that looked like where I was, I knew it in books.
People look at you like they want to drug test you or something.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, like, oh, wow, okay, darling. So.
There's a saying that or something that Henry David Thoreau, one of my favorite writers, wrote back in the 1850s. And it's talking about exactly what you said, knowing who you are. And he wrote, most men live lives of quiet desperation and die with their songs still in them. I've often wondered how many great performances, how many great books, how many great paintings have gone to the grave because people were afraid to go out and embrace that of who they were. Instead they decided to go with whatever it was conventional, right? Mm-hmm. And they lived that life of frustration. That one, when I first read that decades ago, it just stuck with me.
Well, there's another quote that says, creativity takes courage.
Yeah.
You know, it takes a little bit of courage to put that out there, and you're really being vulnerable with people in a sense. I think when you create something.
The painting that I bought, which we have a picture we can put on the screen, has a giant orange in it. And where did the inspiration for the orange come from?
Oh man, so that was a series I did in 2009, and it was from a series called Recovery. So at that time in my life, my father was diagnosed with a neurodegenerative disease around age 16. So he was on and off a disability and always in and out of doctors. And back then they didn't know how to treat the disease, so they did pain management. So he was a candidate for, whenever pharmaceutical sales were getting pushed really hard in I guess the late 90s, early 2000s. He was always on and off all these different pain meds that they would just give to him. And what they would learn over a period of time is people can't live a stable life on medications like that. Oxycodone, oh my gosh, I can't even think of all of them. Oxycontin, Loratab. And so he unfortunately was in and out a lot of drug rehabs, because he would get chemically dependent upon these drugs and it would affect his life. And so he had just finished a stint in a drug rehab, a 30-day stay. And it did bring a lot of chaos to our lives. I'm painting it like it's peaches and cream, right? But for someone to get to a point where they get to a rehab, there's a lot of chaos and things that happen before they get to that point. And so he had just finished this stay at this rehab. And I, too, participated in some of the rehab services like Al-Anon and things like that, which is just how to support people who are going through addiction and alcoholism and things like that. And so at that time in my life when I did the recovery series, my dad came out of rehab. Things had taken a turn for better. They've calmed down a bit. And he was working in the studio with me. So the paintings that I were doing at the time were really large because he was building the canvases. And I was thinking about all that we had been through at that time in our life. And as I was creating the series and how much I had learned about life and people and love and boundaries and all the things that come with dealing through something like that. And I really wanted to be able to paint something that reflected that wisdom and that growth and that endurance and that pain of life, but that had something to give as well. The pain did, some growth. And so prior, when I was younger, rewind to, gosh, I don't know, I was in junior high, my father ran a fruit stand. So he would go to farmers and he would purchase different fruits and vegetables straight from the farmer. Then he'd bring them back to Abilene and he would resell them. And so I had to work at the fruit stand. It was just a family thing. And so I also realized that time in my life taught me a lot of valuable things, which one being how to make a living, right? How to make a living as an artist, how to run a business, how to understand profit margins, how to be kind to customers, how to work. And so I realized that also was another growth spot. And so with that recovery series, I wanted to incorporate the fruit and the vegetable element and also nutrients of life. Sometimes the things that I feel provide me nutrients in my life are hard things. They're not the pieces of chocolate cake, the pizzas, the candy bars. They're the hard things, but they provide me with vitamins and things that I need to grow and be a better person. And so I felt that the way to kind of wrap that recovery series up was to do a series of fruits and vegetables that touched on the hard things, but also brought full circle the love and the growth that came from that time in our life. If that makes sense, that's a lot.
It makes complete sense. And let me see if I can articulate. What I'm hearing is, I'm an Al-Anon devotee, and so I learned so much in Al-Anon. It's a wonderful program. But recovery came from pain, chaos, the unpredictability of living with someone who is addicted to drugs. And it's not it's a disease, right? That's what it is, and that's how you have to see it. But what you brought was pain, and that's the beautiful part of creativity, because the greatest performances, the greatest art, the greatest music are all written and created from that painful side of our soul. How do you harness that?
Well, through art, in every painting, it's important to me to take viewers deeper than the surface.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it's not a one-sided story. Like, I just feel like in the pain, there's purpose. In the darkness, there is light. Like, I just feel like it's this coexistence always. And so I really wait till I get to a place where I can center myself and I feel that I have evolved from the pain into whatever the next part of that may be. And then I just lean into that energy and create art from it. And so throughout the whole series of all the fruits and vegetables, behind the fruit and vegetable, you'll see this circle that's like really abstract. It goes around and it curls and it goes and it does all this. And so that's a symbol of unconditional love. So there's no end and there's no beginning. No matter how chaotic the circle goes throughout the painting, it's not a perfect circle, but it leads back to itself. So there's no end and there's no beginning. And so what I learned was, even though my father's life or what we were going through was a lot different than my friends, and the chaos and all the things, we still had love, no matter what that looked like, if it wasn't a perfect circle, you know? And so I don't know how, I don't know why. I think it's the art, but the pain is fuel for me. It gives me purpose. It gives me, but I think it also is the capability to sit with God quietly and endure the season of whatever it is, right? Like there's a point where I have to accept the pain. I have to accept the chaos. And if I can sit quietly with God, the time will come where I will see and I will feel now how I'm going to use that pain in a purposeful way. And it's always through art. It's not easy, but I really have reached a point in my life where I can sit through the struggle and let it be the struggle. But I know it's not the end, because I know there's good and bad. I know there's hard times and good times. Like, I know that something's going to come out of this and I'm going to be able to use that. And so I just use the hurt to make things, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
It's energy. It has an energy behind it that forces action.
Yeah. Hard part is just getting quiet, you know? Yes. You're talking about the chaos and all. I was like, you don't even have teenagers yet.
See, my daughter's 8, and people use the term three-nager when she was a three-nager. Well, she's 7. She's going to be 8 in September. And I just told my husband this weekend, there's got to be like a 7-nager, or what's the proper term? I don't know, but it's in there.
I don't know. I never had girls. I had 2 boys. That's why I have gray hair. But
there's that too.
There's that too. So when you walk into the studio and you have a blank canvas, a new piece that you want to create, what do you see when you look at the canvas?
Man, I am such an internal artist and I guess an empath and a participant in life, that I really am influenced by life around me. So I've always have experienced something or felt something or been inspired by something. And so I always go back to, what visual symbol can I use to tell a story? What is the story that I just experienced? Is it, did I just meet someone? Did something just happen? And so when I stare at the canvas, it's usually a lot of words at first. What am I trying to say? What am I trying to say? What am I trying to get out? And then through that, I'll come up with the image. So I do a lot of chandeliers. I've done probably hundreds of chandeliers since 2011. But the whole idea is that light, that we all have that light inside of us, that we use to inspire one another and to connect with one another, whether it's a stranger that we just met and you get this instant connection, say you're on vacation and they help you out through the subway or whatever it is, or a mentor or a friend or just this idea that there's this connection. And so I always have a concept in my head. So I don't really see the vision first, the imagery. It's more like, what am I trying to say? What's my point? What do I want? What do I want to say with this canvas? And then I kind of go from there.
I write, I write, and I get writer's block sometimes. And it's like, I think I'll never get out of this. Do you get painter's block?
I do get painter. I don't call it painter's block. If I hit a point where I'm being inauthentic, I have to take a break. So now at this stage in my career, I have 13 different galleries across the United States that I work with. I create a lot of art. What is important to me in my brand, if you will, is authenticity, right? So if I'm pushing out, if I'm pumping out a lot, and I can, because I've been doing it for 17 years, and I get in a flow like a machine, and I love it. I mean, I can get in the zone and just, but I got to always make sure that I'm coming from a place of authenticity. And when it's not authentic, it shows, right? So I do have to pause and go, okay, wait a minute. I'm not being authentic here, and the work is reflecting that. Like what? And so I do take a minute and go, what am I trying to say? Again, I guess I spend a lot of time sitting, because I do have to sit with that in the early mornings and say, what's going on here? What is it?
Do you paint every day?
Paint every day.
Wow.
Well, not every single day, but most, like I tell people, the way you have a 9-to-5 job, that's what I do from 9 to 5. But if I'm not painting every day, then I'm doing things like inventory, images, anything that involves maintaining 13 galleries and a career of making a living as an artist. So.
Do you ever go into the studio in a pissed off mood and just start taking paint and throwing it at the canvas?
Yeah, my husband has a funny story. I threw a cell phone straight through a canvas. I mean, it just went straight through the whole thing. Oh yeah.
Bad phone call.
And for any artist out there, let's see, I've been doing this 17 years, and I've quit probably 300 times, and here I am. I quit, and like my husband knows, like he doesn't even get moved by it anymore. I used to do this big fiasco where I tear the studio up. I quit. This is so hard. Blah, 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 blah. And now I just walk through the house and I'm like, I quit. He's like, oh, you quit today? I'm like, yep, I quit today. So don't talk. If anybody emails, we're just wrapping this up. I quit, blah, blah, blah. I don't even make, I used to make it a whole big deal. Like, I'd call my friends and family, I just want you to know that I'm quitting, okay? It's time to go get a real job. Just can't do this anymore. And then the next morning, I just get up and paint. And I don't announce that I'm back. And now it's just the quitting sessions have gotten less dramatic. It's just like a stomp. I quit. Okay, you're quitting? Yep. Where are you going to work? I don't know. I'm looking. And I get my coffee, and then the next morning, I go back to work.
I would think a desk job would drive you crazy.
Yeah, so just know there's that.
So do you remember the first piece you sold?
Oh my gosh, I try to think. I do remember the first piece that I sold that felt like a real transaction, which, by the way, I tell people there was a time in my life when I couldn't give my art away. Like when I gave my family a painting, it was like, oh, thank you. And in their head, I could see, oh God, what am I going to do with this thing?
You never see it again.
But I do remember selling a piece for $75. And I probably sold something before that at a lower cost. It's just that's the one I can remember. In Buda, Texas, my mom and my stepdad helped me get into a city festival. And it was, just a little town festival. And we got a little booth there, and we brought some art.
And that was $75.
$75.
Did that cover the cost of the booth?
No. Or the gas or the food. No, not at all.
That's the term,
Not
starving
at all.
artist.
Yeah. We ate lots of beans. I can tell you multiple meals you can make out of pinto beans. Like, you can make pinto beans go a long way.
How did you support yourself in the early days?
We did, in fact, starve. I don't recommend it. But my husband, so we were married. He worked a job, but I did do I mean, we did make a lot of sacrifices. Like, I didn't have a car for 7 years, right? We shared a car because I wanted to be able to afford it myself. A little prideful thing, but from what I was doing. So we made a lot of sacrifices, and then I did a lot of odd jobs. So have you ever heard of the census?
The census, like counting people?
Counting people?
Yeah.
I did that.
You went and
I went door to door, and oh man! In fact, I mean, I don't want to take too much of your time,
No,
but yeah. So I counted people, and it worked really well because they just gave you addresses, and you had to count them on your own time. So I could paint in the morning, go count people, come back, paint in the afternoon, and they said like whatever you do, don't go in people's homes. But there's a point where you really have to get like. Say I keep trying to hit your address and you're never home, I still have to turn in your address at some point. So I got to it's like, oh, John's the only one left on my list. I've got to figure out how many people live there. And so there was this one home, and you're advised never to go in the home. And I knock on the door. I'd been trying to get their address for a long time. And finally they answer the door and they invite me in. And it just went over my head like, don't go in their home. I was like, oh, finally I'm going to get the number. And so I go into their home, and I'll never forget, they had these 2 recliners, and then they had these 2 giant pit bulls like tied up on the side of the recliners, and they invite me to sit down.
Welcome to the Manson family.
Pretty much. And so I sit down, and I'm like, oh, I'm just here to get the numbers. They were so nice, took the numbers, all the things, wife and husband. I mean, that sinking feeling of like, I should not be in here hit me for a second. And then I got the numbers, get out, all the things. So fast forward 2 nights later, we're on the couch and we're watching the news, and it says husband and wife, they got into a fight and one of them stabbed the other one. And I'm sitting there and I go, I know those people. And Erwin, my husband, goes, you know those people? And I go, oh yeah, I know them. He's like, how do you know them? I was like, oh my God, I was in their house 2 nights ago. And he's like, what? And I was like, yeah, I was just trying to count. Anyway, so
Have
that's my
you turned in the
census.
census report? Did you take it from 2 to 1 people?
Yeah. Yeah, what a mess. But so I did a lot of odd things. Like, but I made a lot of financial sacrifices. And, yeah. So just doing what you have to do, I think.
But do you look back on it as like drudgery, or do you look at does it have kind of like that romantic feel to it about how much fun it actually was? Because our memories over time can fade, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem as bad as it was probably at the time going through it, because 7 years is a long time to go without a car and to get to that point where you have made it on your own.
Yeah. I mean, I look back and I don't want to do it again, but I look back and I'm thankful because it really is the journey. It really is. And I think there's a realness about it too. Like, I think when people look at being an artist, like I'll work with a lot of young artists, and like say pricing artwork, for example, like their first 2 or 3 paintings, they'll want to price them in a similar price bracket as, I may price my work now, because their hope is to be at this level of profession. And so they want to put the value on the painting. But what I try to say is, hey, this is your 3rd painting. This is my 3,500th painting. There's a journey that gets you there. And so for mine, it was a very real journey in a sense that it's attainable for people. I sold my first painting at $75. I worked odd jobs. I worked really hard to perfect my craft, and I made a whole lot of art to get my style down and all the things. I think when we think about being an artist, we think that you get some magical break and like someone knocks on your door and goes, oh my God, you're such a genius. You're so talented. Let me give you $3,000 today. And it's not. And so I am thankful for my journey, because I feel like it's a real attainable journey. It wasn't anything magical, but were there amazing people that helped me along the way? Were there lessons along the way? Yes, and yes, and yes, So I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. And I think that what you're talking about, the big break and stuff, I mean, you look at stuff like American Idol or something like that. Those people have spent years perfecting their voice, right? They've learned their talent, or America's Got Talent. And there's some incredibly talented people that come on those shows, but they've taken years to hone their craft. One of my friends, a guy named Derek Hughes, I interviewed him for the show. he got into the finals of America's Got Talent. He's a stand-up magician, and oh my gosh, but he started at age 11 doing magic. He's probably 52, 53 now. Yes, it's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of hours and failed magic tricks and things that you paint that you discard because it's just not right. How do you know when to quit a painting?
That's a good question. I think it's for me it's just intuition. But I overwork paintings too. But I just know. I mean, it's just a feeling. But I feel like I'm in such a flow now with my work that there's like honestly a flow to it. It's honestly like flow, and then pull back. Like, okay, we're done, you know? And so I don't even know. I've been doing it so long that it's just a dance. But I did leave out a part too, again, about that pain being the fuel and the purpose is, you know, you hear a lot more about it now. What do you want to do? You want to enjoy what you're doing also. If you're going to be working this job for 40 hours a week, you know, is there something that you could do that you enjoy? But when I was in college and we were really, oh my God, so poor, and I was trying to sell art, I went back to college later in life to get an art degree. I think I was either 21 or 23. And I was married because we marry young in West Texas. So in January, I'll be married 20 years, which I'm so grateful. I have an amazing husband. And we've endured and lived a lot and grown up together. It's beautiful. But I was painting in our garage, and I was using spray paint at the time, painting this big canvas. Long story short is I thought I had heartburn or indigestion. By the time I got to the ER, I had collapsed a lung. A full-blown lung. So that's kind of like an emergency type situation.
Yeah.
And so they did emergency surgery. They called him at work because I really try to think if there were cell phones back then because we didn't have a cell phone. But they called him at work and they thought I had a blood clot in my lung and told him to come down immediately. By the time he had got there, I'd already done surgery. So I was in the hospital for a week with a chest tube. They call it a spontaneous pneumothorax, and it's where the lung collapses. At that point, is when I realized I was also working in banking. So I was going to college for art, and then I had a job in banking as a teller and a personal banker. And laying in the hospital bed for a week, you really realize what's really important to you. Like, for example, being outside is important to me, and I realized that that's a gift to be able to walk outside because for some people they don't get to just walk outside all the time and be in the grass. And then I also realized how important art was to me, that it was in fact who I was, and that I wanted to spend my time trying to make a living as an artist, no matter how hard it was. And at that point for me, my time became very valuable. It was like all of a sudden at 21 or 23 years old, I felt, even though I was not about to die, for me, it really felt like a near-death type of situation. And so I really got to reevaluate how I wanted to live. And I knew that art was that important. And so I'm so thankful that my husband was willing to jump on the journey. And so that was also the fuel that helped me keep going when it was really, really hard.
Absolutely. Pain to purpose is you know, a lot's been written about it, but a lot's been lived about it, but you really do live that. Real quickly, how do you go about getting your work into a gallery? I mean, now the doors are going to be more open for you, but early on, tell us about that first experience getting your artwork shown in a gallery.
Oh man, the first experiences are awful. Awful. You get lots and lots and lots of rejection. Because you're young and you don't know and you're figuring it all out. But looking back, a lot of times it was because I didn't do my research. So for example, let's say I have this big orange painting like the one that you have, and it's all these different colors. And I go to this gallery and they only show Native American landscapes. Are they going to show my work?
Odds are no.
No. Okay. And so in the early years, I wasn't doing my research. And another thing is with galleries, it's a partnership. It's not okay, there is growing up for me, and it could be because I was uneducated in the art world and I was still trying to learn it all. I believe that the gallery was going to save you. They were going to be the person that takes you to the next level. They were going to do all the hard work for you, and you've made it. And all you have to do is make paintings. Not true. It's a partnership. So in a partnership, it's a give and take, give and take. And so they were just a place that is going to sell your work and promote it and support you, but you still have to bring in your part of the deal, and you still have to do your own work for yourself as well and bring that value to that work and into them. And so when it really started to work for me for galleries is when I started investing in the gallery in a sense of going to their openings, visiting them, learning about them. Who are they? What work do they represent? What are they trying to do? What is it that they're looking for? And a lot of times it's like little things, like say you have this amazing artwork, but on the edges of the canvas, it's all torn up, or there's sunflower seeds and bubble gum stuck to it because you just ripped it out of the studio. People aren't going to hang that on their wall, and so just learning that. And again, it's almost like, even though there is something really magical about art in the art world, and I don't ever want to lose that magic, you also have to get in a very practical way as well when working with it, in a sense of like, I was real passionate about making these giant paintings, and I felt like I had a lot to say. Well, whenever I'm making 10-foot by 9-foot paintings, how many people have space for that? I've just narrowed it down. And so when a gallery is like, in a sense, they sell a lot of art and they're in a tourist destination, and the average artwork that they sell is like 48 by 48 because people's homes. Now I'm asking them to invest in me by letting me take up half their wall in the entire gallery, with the odds of somebody buying it being very, very slim. So just all those practical things that I had to really learn how to hone in my strong creative voice and passion, but in a practical way that I could be a part of the world.
Yeah, it's perfect. Perfectly said. You started a nonprofit. Tell us about Hopefully Sow.
So Hopefully Sow is a 501(c)(3). We're 100% volunteer based. So all of us are volunteers. We all have day jobs, and then we do this as a volunteer. So we serve teenagers in foster care. Those mostly, well, all in group homes and shelters. So those kiddos that are maybe staying there temporarily or may age out of the system. So we do that, we call it sowing seeds. So we sow seeds of love, joy, and aspiration. So we do that we attempt to meet their tangible needs. So coming up in August, we're going to take all of them, about 75, back to school clothes shopping in partnership with Riverbend. And we're also going to do shoes this year in partnership with Chase's Kicks and Kickin' ATX. So that's a tangible way. And then we also do driver's license for aging out youth. So aging out youth, for them to get their driver's license is really hard because they don't have a car to drive. And so we partner with Austin Driving School and some of the driving schools around here, and we'll pay for those kiddos to get private driving lessons and then get their driver's license. So we just do a few things to kind of help fill in the gaps for these amazing organizations in the community that are taking care of these kiddos.
Sure. Taking care of the least among us, as Jesus commanded us to do. Why foster kids?
I started volunteering. I went one time to do art. I got invited to do art with a group of girls at the Austin Children's Shelter years ago. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. Probably like 2011. And I never been exposed to foster care or the system or any of it. And so I got to use art in a way that provided them like a healthy escape. And I just started learning about the challenges that they face, where they were at, and teenagers, a lot of teenagers, and that teenagers were the most underserved in the foster care system. And I don't know, one thing led to another, and the more I learned, I couldn't not do anything, right? So I knew I couldn't foster, but what could I do? well, I can teach them art. I can provide art as an outlet. And so through that, I learned of more needs and more needs and more needs. And then our community group that was here at Riverbend, they too were learning of the needs. And so it was just really, I mean, it was one of those like God had his hand on it type thing, because in our community group, we had the attorney, we had a CPA, we had an executive assistant, and we formed this nonprofit because we knew we needed more money. We met more kids in it. And so it just kind of, I don't know, it just happened. But the hope is that we would be out of business. But the opposite happened. We just learned more and more and more and more and more and more. Yeah. So I've just been dedicated to it ever since.
It's wonderful. The needs of that community are huge, and they are the forgotten ones. They are truly the disenfranchised people, and it's horrible because they weren't asked to be born into really shitty family situations and all, and they're removed. But no, it's wonderful you're making a difference like that. And everything that you sell, you give money back to Hopefully Sow. Is that correct? Yes. That is wonderful.
Well, and I know, like, it's really hard. It's just a hard thing because I've gotten to know a lot of these kids on a personal level. So now these are my friends. Some of them are family. Like I used to do a lot of mentoring, and so it's hard because it's like it's almost been reversed. Like I feel like they give back to me so much more than I could give back to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely it does. How did Hopefully Sow navigate through the pandemic?
Oh man, that was so hard. It was so hard because we used to send volunteers, including myself, once a week into cottages where there's 13 kids. And I don't know if you remember during the pandemic, but it was like, as it slowly started to unfold and like trying to get back to normal, you could only be around 4 people. You could only be around 10 people. I don't know if you remember that. And they had like a number. So we really endured a long, long, long time, even post-pandemic, because with 13 kids and 3 staff, there's already 16 people in a cottage. So the risk of them sending a volunteer in was not it was just not going to happen for a while. But the way we made it through the pandemic is we really learned what our core impact programs were. Like we really learned what was most impactful, and we leaned into that. And so instead of sending volunteers into the cottages to lead arts and crafts, we now started packing blessing boxes, and we'd send them to all the cottages. So we were serving 104 kids, and we would pack 8 boxes for 13 kids. So 8 cottages with 13 kids, and we would pre-package the art and craft that we were going to do with the instructions and send them there with that. And we would send them the dinner and all the things. So it was very hard during the pandemic, but we pivoted. And what I am thankful for is we really learned our core. And so a lot of the other programs that we were really trying to push or do, they kind of fell to the wayside. And now we still are leaning into what we formed during the pandemic, which is what we feel is like the most important. Let's lean into this, you know.
Common theme with you is you're a constant learner. I mean, you're constantly learning. That's all the way through every bit of our time together today. Is you're constantly learning, which I think is great. That'll keep you young and keep you going, right?
Well, that's good to hear, because the older I get, I feel like the less I know. So it's like, I used to be like, oh yeah, in my 20s, and now I'm like, I don't know, maybe. I don't know.
Well, your husband Erwin told me a story a few years back about one of his early experiences with foster kids. Y'all took him out for burgers or something like that, and he said this one child, a young person looked at me and said, "Thank you so much." He's like, "It's just a burger and fries," I mean, right? Because something we take for granted, but it goes back to something one of my friends said one time, which stuck with me. If you capture the heart of a child, you show them you care, they'll give you everything else. They just want to know you care. But that was very impactful to him, and he was practically crying, telling me the story. I go, "Okay, stop now," because you get me emotional.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful work, and the needs of that community are overwhelming. Foster placements are up 1,000% in the last decade. No one could have anticipated that. But they're drinking from a fire hose, and it doesn't stop. Christmas, they don't have a Christmas like we have. They are they're still children being taken out of dangerous situations. So I applaud the work you're doing. I think it's wonderful.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. And we try, like, we're a really small organization, but we really try to be impactful. And so, you know, what I tell people is a lot of people may steer clear of foster care because they think the only way to help is to foster. But there's so many ways that we can help where we're at with what we have. And it's just learning, you know. And so I always do a call when I have volunteers. I always do a call with them prior. Hey, who are you? You want to volunteer? Well, what do you do? And a lot of times what they already do is a gift to the kids. And so I just try to intertwine that. But yeah, something as simple as going out to eat. And like, and we don't really list the details on the website, but going out to eat is a big deal for us. It's one of our main things that we do, and it's so important. And I'll have volunteers go, okay, let me get this straight. You want me just to show up to Cheesecake Factory and eat dinner with 15 kids, like, and they feel like they're not making an impact. But here's the thing. When it's 15 kids to a cottage, and they're used to being served in the dining hall, and they're always being served the same things, and they're always in this environment where they're in a group setting, teenagers alone want to be seen and heard. And it's really hard for kids in these group settings to be seen and heard when there's so many of them and they're, you know, being seen by staff. And the organizations do a fantastic job. We just try to help out also. So being able to go to a restaurant and look at a menu and go, I want the cheeseburger with onions and pickles, and I want a milkshake. And everybody gets to individually order their own. It's just a tiny way of saying you are an individual, you have a choice. And to make it like fun and have a good time. I mean, it gets rowdy, but it's fun. And it's just we just try to make an impact with what we can.
Yeah, you're telling those kids you do have value. You're important to me, right?
Yeah.
And they feel that. Yeah, and the portions they serve at the Cheesecake Factory could last them for 3 days.
Yeah.
Although teenagers eat more food than some small countries do, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a new project you're working on. Tell us about that.
I'm making a film. So, again, turning that pain into purpose. I'll probably cry. But unfortunately, that father that I was telling you about, he passed away in 2022 on my husband's birthday.
Oh, wow.
March 30th of 2022. And so I've been sitting with that pain, which is a pain that paralyzes you, unfortunately, for the last year. And I'm going to use that pain to make a very purposeful film that's about love and loss and magic. So there'll be a lot of art weaved into it.
What a surprise.
Yeah.
How far along is the project?
Well, we're still in the writing phases of it. We've got most of it written, so we're going to go to script. We've got the storyline, and we're building the team.
This is an exciting new adventure, but as a lifelong learner, I mean, you're probably blazing the trail there.
Oh my gosh. You know what? It's a lot. I feel like God's put it on my heart because I feel like it's going to be a big part of my healing. Because I think art is that for me. It's a very vital part of how I get through this world, and so I'm thankful for that. But there are a lot of stories woven into it that I'm learning as I reflect upon it, you know. So it's definitely a journey. And I think also what's helping me through this grief is doing something I've never done before, because I don't know what I'm doing at all. And there's a huge vulnerability in that. And there's a lot of Willy Wonka has a quote that says, "The suspense is terrible. I hope it lasts." And so I'm tapping into emotions that I haven't felt in a long time because I've been in my own world for 17 years. I'm in a whole nother place where I'm feeling vulnerable and tingly and scared and what am I doing and all these things. And so in a way, it's helping me distract a little bit and cope with my grief. And so I'm very grateful for that. Even though it's uncomfortable and it's scary and all the things, it makes me feel alive, you know?
Yeah. I'm excited. Do you any prospective date on when it will be out?
You know, Listen, I can make a painting in like 3 hours. I've been told this is going to be about a 2 or 5 year journey. So, no. There's many layers to filmmaking. Just like painting, but a lot more layers to filmmaking.
Yes, probably a lot more people too.
A lot more people, which I'm grateful for.
So, you're a wife, mother, business person, entrepreneur. You run a nonprofit. What do you do to take care of yourself?
Okay, I don't do the best job at that, but that's sitting still. I mean, I have to. I have to sit with God, and I have to sit with myself. That's the only way, honestly, I can do anything, you know? So I do take time every morning to sit, and I don't know this verbiage is offensive, this is not, but for me, it's a meditative state, but I sit with God, and I sit with who I feel to be my true, authentic self, not Ash, the mom, the artist, the just my being, and I sit with God and with my true self, and I have a lot of time to sit. So it's funny because it's like I sound so productive, but in that production I do a lot of sitting. Yeah. But that's what I have to do. I have to stay connected to God and my true self.
No music, no distractions, nothing, just
quiet.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful. I'm thankful, and I'm probably going to cry, but in that, I sit with my father now, so there's the 3 of us.
Really?
Yeah, but I connect to that every morning, and sometimes in the middle of the day, you just got to take a moment and remember that I can connect because nothing's that important.
That's right. You learn that over time.
Yeah.
Grief is hard. I mean, grief is ongoing.
Yeah.
Right? It gets easier over time, but it is a real emotion that you've just got to let evolve. You can't push it. And if you tamp it down, that can come out in unhealthy ways as well. But no, good for you. Good for you.
Well, I think what I'm learning prior to the film is that for me, I have to coexist with the pain. Like I have to. So I get to have my joy and my happiness and my creation, but at the same time, I do have hurt and loss and pain. But it has humbled me. It's like, it makes no sense, but I'm at the part where I'm trying to evolve with the grief. I'm trying to let it set in me. Okay, who am I now with this? Beyond the pain. And what I found is, before my dad died, I was a person that had to do everything on my own, right? I've got to do this. I'm going to be strong enough, wise enough, smart enough. I'm just going to be successful. And then after my dad died, I realized I can't do anything on my own. Like, I need people. Like, I need people. I need to be around people. I need people to know that I need them. I need to work together with people. And so I'm living a life from a more authentic part of me than I ever have before, because I can't. I'm broken. Like, that broke me big time. But I'm living a deeper, richer, connected life than I did, but unfortunately it has to coexist with that pain. But I feel like through that I really know who I am now. Like, I really know who I am. But I am no longer trying to get the pain to go away, because it's a part of that way of living now that also is just very connected. It's just really hard to explain. But I'm trying to accept that this will always be a part of me.
Sure. You've explained it beautifully, actually. When you have a family member that is suffering from the disease of addiction, there is forgiveness involved with that person. How did you find it in your heart to forgive your father?
Well, because one, we can say, okay, did he have a drug addiction? Yes. Did he have behaviorals that were tied to that drug addiction? Yes. But that's not who he is or all he is. So what is he? He's funny, he's smart, he's caring, he's giving, he's my father. He's a provider. He's disabled. He too is fighting his own battle in this life with God, whatever that is. He too is on his own journey. He's loving, he's generous, he's caring. So I can't allow these two flaws to dictate an entire beautiful relationship. What I can do is put boundaries around how I'm going to interact with those few flaws. But I'm not giving over this beautiful relationship due to those two flaws. So what can I do to get help to make sure I can maintain this relationship and handle those flaws? So that's why I turned to Al-Anon. But forgiveness was a little bit easier for me because I really feel connected to God and to myself. And so I'm able to give my father the space to be on his own journey as well. It's not so much about me, right? But it's unfortunate that until tragedy happens or until somebody passes, sometimes we lose sight of all the things that they brought to the world. So it was just easier for me because I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes. And he was fighting a disease, and he was vulnerable and authentic in the sense of like, hey, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be this person. And so it's easy to forgive somebody who you see fighting their own. He never did anything to hurt me. Like he never, so the forgiveness was pretty easy.
How'd you learn boundaries?
Al-Anon.
I knew the answer.
And I still have a hard time with them. It's not easy for me because it's like you don't want to be rude or mean or all the things. But
that's life. I mean, people come at you. Most people have an agenda for your life, right? They want something, and as long as you can serve that agenda, then they're going to be friendly with you or whatever. But but you've got to also take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, which I know you've heard, you're not going to be good to anybody else, right? Yeah,
and that's what going through Dad, before he passed away, we cared for him. He was fully disabled for 2 years. But again, that connection to God helped me find myself. And when I found myself and I forgave myself and I learned about myself, I loved myself. Sounds awful to say. People don't like to hear that. Not myself as like this ego person, but it's easier to take care of that true self when you know it. You know what I mean? And so, and if I'm not taking care of that true self, then I can't take care of all these other relationships that I've been blessed with, my kids, my husband, but it's that I would have never learned that person inside of me if it wasn't for that relationship with God, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And it's okay to say you love yourself. Now, if it's narcissistic love, that's a different
Or I just want to
level.
take care of myself and, bring a better human to the world.
There you go. We'll go with that. So we have your www.ashalmonte.com and www.hopefullysow.org on the screen.
Okay.
So people can go there. And I would encourage them to go check out your website. It's got beautiful pieces of art, and you can actually put it on anything from, T-shirts to hoodies to stationery and other things. It's very user-friendly, and it's a fun website, actually. And Hopefully Sow is as well in a different realm. One last question.
Okay.
I was thinking about this, and when your artwork hangs in someone's home, you become part of that family's legacy. Because, like the artwork of yours I have in my home, my kids will get, and thankfully they love it. So they're kind of like, when you going to die, Dad? 40 years, okay? But you become part of that family's legacy, and it gets handed down. And the story of how it was created, I've shared with my kids, right? How do you want to be remembered?
Now I'm going to cry. I want to be remembered as somebody who helped people find themselves. And if it's through art, okay. But I want people to find their true selves and lean into that. If I can sell an artwork, that's fantastic. It's a transaction. It pays the bills. I'm oh so grateful. if I can inspire someone, it's a ripple. Now they're going to go and do, if that makes sense.
Which is the mission statement of Hopefully Sow: love, joy, and aspiration. Mm-hmm. Aspiration. It's like, okay, you don't hear that word often. You hear love and joy a lot, but that's making a difference, making an impact on someone's life, and they see the value in themselves, and they can do it.
Yeah, and so with that aspiration, it's about exposure. So that's important for us at Hopefully So to take some of the kids to go do things that they've never done before so that they're exposed to different things. So later in life, they might go, oh my gosh, I remember visiting XYZ place. Now they have an aspiration, a goal. Yeah.
It's wonderful work y'all are doing, and thank you for it. And thank you for coming on.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me.
This was fun. So anything else that you want the world to know about Ash Almonte?
I'm a terrible cook, but other than that, we're good. If you come over for dinner, I'm going to buy it and then transfer it into a dish.
Your husband is rail thin. Now I know his secret.
That might be part of it.
Now I know his secret. All right. Thanks, Ash. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
That is our show for today, and thank you for being with us. And go check out her website, ashalmonte.com, and check out hopefullysow.org. If you feel inclined to volunteer, please contact her and go interact with these kids. They are starving for attention. They're starving for someone to say, I value you. You are important. Because they really have the odds stacked against them. And if not that, if you feel inclined to make a donation, please do that. As you heard, it's an all-volunteer organization. They're not getting salaries for this. They certainly don't do it for fame or fortune, because it's difficult dealing with teenagers who have two parents in the home. It's much harder dealing with teenagers who come from really fucked up families and backgrounds and stuff. But thank you for being here. I will be back on the audio podcast tomorrow with another daily dose of inspiration. Until then, everyone, be well.